Welcome back everyone. This is the second part of the series. In this part we'll be starting the sculpt of the gate. So let's just get rid of everything that we don't need for now. This includes the logs on the sides and the little hinge thing that we created before. And let's move our gate to a new collection and let's just call it wood for sculpting, so that everything is neatly organized and we don't have to deal with our things that we're not working on immediately. So let's just hide the original collection so that our view is isolated to just the planks that we want to be working on. Now we can create a bevel modifier. You can go to the modifiers tab and select bevel, give it 3 segments. I'm using hard ops here, so this is kind of a shortcut way of doing it. Now let's select every other plank going from the left side to the right side, and by pressing Ctrl J we can all join them into one mesh. This will make it easier for us to sculpt the planks without having to go from layout to sculpting mode every time we want to sculpt the next plank. Actually, let's just rename our collection into wood modifier, because this is where our planks with the modifier will be living. Now we can duplicate everything and move it to another collection, and we're just gonna call it wood for sculpting. This allows us to keep our planks with the modifier not applied as a backup if we want to change something in the bevel modifier later. We can now go ahead and apply our bevel modifier. You can do that by pressing Ctrl A while hovering over the bevel modifier, or going to the little arrow and pressing apply. Now let's hop over to our sculpt mode, and up here in the remesh tab let's set 0.005 as our starting value. Hit remesh and this will give us a lot of geometry on our planks. As you can see, our geometry is now densely packed, which we want for this style of sculpting that I'm gonna show you in a moment here. A few rotations around our planks over here just to see that everything has been remeshed properly, there's no weird artifacts. And if everything seems fine, we can go into our modifiers tab again and select multi-resolution. Hit subdivide one time, and this will give us the option of having a lot more detail without being too destructive towards our mesh. We can always either add subdivisions to get more details or remove them to get less. For easier sculpting, I'm just gonna jump back into layout mode and rotate the planks 90 degrees on the x-axis. Since the graphical tablet is in landscape mode, it's easier to pull horizontal lines than it is to draw vertical lines. Now up here in our brush settings, we just want to click on front faces only. This won't allow the faces on the opposing side of which we are sculpting to be deformed, and will keep everything intact. Up here on the right you can see I activated our mirror option on the x-axis, and with our clay strips brush selected, we're just gonna start pulling horizontal lines all the way across our first plank here. Trust me when I say this, I am the worst at sculpting, so if I can do this, you can do this no problem. Just pulling long horizontal lines all across the planks is how we're gonna get our wood texture baked into our new mesh. You can experiment a lot here by either pressing harder on your tablet to get deeper grooves or lighter to get lighter ones. If you're not using a graphical tablet and are doing this with a mouse, you can just change the strength settings and the size of the brush to get your desired result. So let me show you something else. Up here in the shaders tab, you can select cavity. This will give you a lot more detail, so you can better see what you're working on. Also, you can change the matte cap if you want. This will give you also different kinds of shadings, and you can think of it as lighting options. So you can either change the color of them or change the lighting setup so that you better see what you're working with. Back to our plank here, we can pull more lines across it, check on every side. Don't forget the upper and the lower part of the plank here. Just by adjusting the size of the brush, we can make it more precise and get the detail where we need it over here and down here, of course. If it's easier for you, you can mask the lower planks out of the scene, so you're just left with the one you're working with, and make it easier for you to see what you're working on. But for now, since we spaced them out and selected every second plank, there's space enough for us to see what we're doing below the planks. Coming back up here, just creating more lines. By holding down Control on your keyboard while you're pulling the lines, you're actually creating grooves or indentations rather than build-ups on the plank. This will then give you an even more 3D-ish look. Let's not forget the front and back sides here. We're just going to pull a few lines through here and of course on the back side of the plank, so we get an even distribution of detail throughout every part of the plank. I know that at the moment our planks seem a little flat. We're gonna change this in a second here. Here I was just trying out the feel of the clay build-up brush, so I know where to exaggerate the shapes and where to leave it a little more simplified. Let us now select our crease brush and create more grooves and indentations in the wood to make it feel more natural and even more 3D. So just the crease brush, select your size, select your strength. You can select the size by pressing F and the strength by pressing Shift F, and then just moving your mouse or pen. With the desired size and strength selected, we can now push more lines and grooves into our plank over here. Often in the beginning everything will feel flat and like you haven't put in enough detail yet, but don't worry, that's normal at the beginning. We don't yet know how far we can push our sculpts. So we're gonna change that in a second. You can see that I did the same mistake right here, where I thought I had some detail going, but then realized it was looking really flat and I needed to change that. Still using the crease brush, I created some lines on top of the wood and of course some lines below. For this I also deactivated the mirror modifier, so I don't have such symmetry on such small spaces. With the mirror modifier active again, I go back into sculpting the front face of our plank here. You can even see that I'm pushing the strength a lot higher and making the brush smaller to get smaller, more detailed grooves, but it isn't working out for me just because we don't have enough resolution to work with here. So I jump back into our multi-resolution modifier and I subdivide it one more time to get more detail. Now this doesn't help us from the get-go. What we need to do is go back into our clay build-up brush and just recreate the thing kinda again. I've sped up the process here so you don't have to watch through the boring part again. And yeah, basically that's what you want to do. Just get the clay build up and start moving the same lines again with pressing either harder or softer on your tablet. Going back into our crease brush, we create more details into our super high detail mesh right now, and you can already see the difference from before. It's actually starting to look like wood a little bit, and the grooves that we are creating are way more detailed and deeper and just more sharp. Sorry if this was really annoying. Just looking through the tutorial right now, I see that I showing you something that's a mistake, which I recreated and rectified here, but I think it's kind of cool to see how making mistakes leads you to better results in the end. And you don't have to take your time as much in the second phase of pushing those lines. You already see where the lines are, you are just kind of amplifying them and making them a lot more detailed and stronger. Since we subdivided our mesh the second time, we can get even more detail here on the front sides and the back sides of our plank here. And you can already see how it's going a lot more faster than it was before. You will quickly realize that you're getting better and better as you're moving down to the lower planks. You will get a feel for sculpting a lot quicker as you're doing the repetitive task of sculpting wood from one plank to the other until the full gate is finished. Just grabbing the crease brush again here to create some thinner lines along the lower part here. And just creating even more detail on our wood. Generally, the smaller the brush, the harder you can press on your tablet. It's gonna create this super thin, super high detail lines that make the wood feel a little bit more realistic than just having the bigger grooves and bigger indentations in it. We're gonna do the same thing on the lower part. Right now my mirror modifier is active, but we've already got so much detail in there that it doesn't really matter. It won't be that noticeable in the end. Okay, it's already looking pretty nice here. Let's get a few more holes in the wood. Maybe like some bugs were digging in here, or maybe it was damaged by other wood or just by cutting with some tools. So yeah, this looks pretty good. We can now jump on to the other plank and we're just gonna repeat that process over and over and over again until we reach the very last plank of our gate. Just gonna grab the clay brush again and just pull some bigger lines into the wood here, creating the grooves and creating the pattern that we want. This part of the tutorial will be sped up because I don't think it's any fun for you, or for me for that matter, to be repeating myself over and over again and for you to look at the same steps in real time over and over again. Just remember, clay strips build up, just create big shapes, create nice big grooves, and then crease brush creates smaller fine lines that kind of pull the eye and give you that sharp detail that you want. Don't forget to either apply or hide the mirror modifier so you can easily have the same detail on both sides of the plank and maybe not have it visible on the upper and the lower parts of the plank where it's densely packed geometry and symmetry will kind of stand out. As a general rule, we want the mirror modifier to be active on the opposing side of our mesh, so we don't get symmetry on the same side of the wood that we're looking at. We want it to be on the other side. That way we're not only saving time, but also saving our finger joints. While sculpting the gate, I did feel some discomfort in my left wrist because I was clicking a lot of Ctrl Z or undo. And because Ctrl and Z are pretty far apart on my keyboard, this kind of stretched my wrist a lot. So to help myself out, I shortcutted the undo function to Ctrl and Y, which is much closer to the Control key. This allowed me to relax my wrist a lot, and yeah, I never looked back. As we are reaching the final part of our first set of planks here, you will surely notice that your sculpting is getting a lot better as you proceed on towards the final planks. Repetition is definitely key here, and you'll repeating the same pattern a lot during this tutorial. Also, you can see that here and there I placed scratches on the wood that aren't following the grain that we sculpted before. Using the carve brush, I placed strategic scratches here and there, just so that it breaks up the pattern a little bit and our eye is a little more drawn towards those details. So yeah, as we are finishing this last plank over here, we're gonna go back to our previous planks just to check if we could add a little bit more detail anywhere else. Maybe on the sides we missed a few carves, but yeah, basically our first set of planks is done here. And as we jump back into layout view, they are kind of looking nice. We're now gonna rotate them back into place, unhide the planks that we hidden before, so that we can see how they look and feel in the original position that we had them planned in. We can just rotate around a little bit, look at all the details from every side. We can go as far as activating our first collection again, just to see how it all looks in a global picture. And if we are satisfied with the result that we have, we can go back into our wood collection. Again, select every other plank that's vertical left over here, and now just join them into one mesh again. And there we go. Now you can just rotate the planks on the x-axis again. Go into our isolation view by pressing Shift H and apply the bevel modifier so we get those nice bevels baked in. There we go. Now we are ready to jump back into sculpting mode. You might have noticed a thin gray line on the top left corner here. It's kind of hiding some options. I was streaming at the time and testing out some layouts, so yeah, that's kinda left here in the recording. I'm not too happy about it, but it is what it is. Okay, jumping into our remesh tab up here. The last time we tried 0.005, we then added 2 subdivision levels with our multi-resolution. So right now let's try 0.002. We can now go into our modifiers tab and just select the multi-resolution modifier again and click subdivide just one time. Now, depending on your PC, this might take a while and it might not. It just depends on your specs. So there we go. With that activated, we are again ready to get into our time warp mode and start sculpting our new planks. Nothing's really changed. We're just pulling horizontal lines with clay buildup from left to right, right to left until we get this bark texture going. Then we use our carve brush to carve in the detail. I've noticed that on the last set of planks I forgot to carve in the edges. This you can do by using the scrape brush and just going along the edges and creating this nice beveled edges. They're gonna look super stylized and light is gonna catch very nicely on them. Here you can use a lot of strength and a bigger brush to get those edges nice and big and looking sharp. We want to do this along almost every edge on our planks so that they look nice and beveled. If for some reason you get weird artifacts here or the edges don't want to really connect with one another, just hold Shift first on the edge while you're moving your brush around to smooth it out just a little bit. This will create more smooth geometry, which the edge then catch a lot better on. Moving in here to get a little bit more finer detail on the edges, just scraping them off, creating edges wherever we go, beveling it. And feel free to move your brush a lot. The more jaggeder the edges, the more stylized it will feel. Let's jump into our warp mode again, using hard strokes over here, just moving the brush left, right, creating those nice details, big grooves, big shapes first, detail later, and just making the planks feel like natural wood. And at this point, I just know that you're either having a lot of fun or having a lot of doubt in your life choices. But don't worry, repetition is key, as I said, and just keep going. Trust the process and you will get there eventually. As I said, I'm the worst at sculpting ever, so if I can do it, you can do it as well. If you ever get frustrated, just take a break. There's no point in just pushing through and doing the same thing over and over again and the same mistakes over and over again. Sometimes it just takes time or a good nap or a good night's sleep to get you back into the creative space that you need to get back on track. Few more planks left to do here, and you can see even the second series of planks that we're doing are looking way better, at least to me they are, than the first set of planks. It's just when you're doing the same thing over again, you just get a better feel for the brush. It's also, I think, the geometry that we created when remeshing it. We had 0.005 on the first set of planks, and we started with 0.002 on the second set of planks, and then one subdivision modifier on the multi-resolution modifier. I feel like this is giving us much stronger brush strokes. I don't know if that's true, but it just feels that way to me. Don't forget the little holes. Get your carve brush and create little holes where you think that bugs would maybe crawl in or it would be damaged by some kind of tools. And there we go, the second series of planks is almost done. We're just pushing for some final detail here, either on the front faces or on the sides. Don't forget beveled edges that we also need to create with our scrape brush. And we're just gonna move back to our layout view in a second here to see how it all clicks together, at least how the vertical planks click together. If you jump back into layout view now and you see no details on your planks, don't panic. It's just how the multi-resolution works. You can see it has 3 levels of displaying the information. So you got level viewport, sculpt and render. Just make sure it's on level 1 on all 3 of them. We can now unhide our previous planks and rotate our planks back into place. And it's looking really cool already. Just look at that detail that you sculpted. Great job. So all that is left is our horizontal planks that bind the gate together. Again, select them all. You can now join them into one mesh. And let's see, since we sculpted a lot of new geometry onto our planks, they got a little thicker. So we need to move them out a little bit just so they don't dive into our sculpted planks. Now we can apply the bevel modifier and go into isolation view and into our sculpt mode. Let's remesh them again to 0.002 and go into our multi-resolution modifier in the modifiers tab and subdivide it one time. Everything exactly the same as we did it for our previous planks. Again, you'll maybe have to wait a little longer or a little shorter time when it's subdividing. It just depends on your specs. Jumping into warp speed again, we just create the same exact details that we did for our previous planks. Nothing much to tell you here, it's just again clay build-up brush. Get all the bigger details in first, then get your scrape brush or your carve brush and just carve in the detail that you feel is necessary to make it look organic, to make it look like a bark pattern. Sculpting is such a subjective process, it's not really that you can exactly recreate what I'm doing here, so I just can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Whenever you feel ready, feel free to share it on the Discord channel. I'm sure you guys are doing an awesome job. We are almost done here. Again, don't forget the left and right sides. Just connect the grooves that you have on the front and the back faces together on the sides to make the wood feel like it may be split here. Bevel the edges, of course, using our scrape brush, and you're gonna be done in no time. Maybe another hole here and there from the bugs or the damage. And there we go. Well, the only thing left to do here, as far as sculpting goes, is sculpting our logs. You can repeat the same process we did before for our logs. Just apply the bevel modifier, go into sculpt mode, remesh them to 0.002 and start sculpting away. Again, clay buildup throughout the full length of the logs and then get carving with the carve brush to get that detail in. Use your scrape brush to get the bevels on the edges and again, you'll see the result very fast. And there we go, our first log is done. Get it back into scene view and let's do the exact same thing for the second log. For me at least, at first it was kind of weird because the log is a little bigger, but you'll get there, just trust the process. Just pull as long lines as you can and then break them up with more detailed lines in between them. And that should be it, at least for the sculpting part. Please ignore the weird thorns on the left side of your screen. It's again something from the stream I was trying out. But basically, yeah, you're done with sculpting, so good job. The only thing left to do here now is to sculpt, or rather to model the high detail for our ropes here. Oh yeah, and a little pivot branch as well. So let's jump right in. The first thing we want to do is create a cylinder somewhere at the beginning of our rope and scale it down so it's roughly 1/4 the width of our rope. After that, we want to rotate it to be facing the same direction as to where the rope is going. And in edit mode, we're just gonna duplicate it and place it so the cylinders are to the left, right, above and below, kind of intersecting each other. This will be used as the base of our high poly rope, which we will later twist into the proper form. If you imagine a real world rope cut straight through the middle, this would kind of be the pattern that you would see, but it will be really twisted up. So we scaled it up a little bit and scaled it a lot along the y-axis, and we're just gonna position it to the left side of the beginning of our low poly rope. By pressing Ctrl R, we're gonna add loop cuts to it, let's say 10 on each side. And we're gonna do that for every strand of the rope here. Just gonna shade smooth, and here I press sharpen, but you can just cut off the end faces so you'll get the same result here. We're gonna cut the end faces away later on, so you can do it right now, it doesn't really matter. Once that's done, we can use a subdivision modifier by pressing Ctrl 1. This is gonna give it one subdivision level. And here we also want to make sure that we have all our values applied, like rotation, scale, and position. So you can press Ctrl A to get the menu up and then click all transforms. After that, right click and origin to geometry. That's gonna give it the right origin point for us. After that, we jump right into our modifier stack and create a curve modifier here. In the curve object option, we click on our curve here to the right, which is represented by our low poly rope. And here comes the part where we have to choose on which orientation of the axis we're gonna send the rope through. For me, -y works best here. You're gonna have to figure out which one works for you. But it's probably gonna be the same one if you follow the tutorial exactly. It's fine if it's not, just try to figure out which axis makes your high poly rope actually conform to the low poly rope. Once you've done that, go into the edit mode of the high poly rope, and with soft select selected, by pressing O on your keyboard, you can select the front vertices and just rotate them along the y-axis. This will rotate all the individual strands and give us the look that we're aiming for. Once we exit out of edit mode, our rope will be placed back onto our curve. Now, since we know that our rope is following our curve and that it's already been twisted as we want it, now we have to figure out how to send it along the full length of the rope. For this, let's go into our modifier stack and grab our array modifier. Our array modifier is automatically placed on the x-axis, so we're gonna try other axes to see which one fits best. So since none of them work, I tried moving the array modifier one place above the curve modifier. This should give us the proper modifier stack for this to work. And now we can go into our curve modifier down there and just remove the little display icon. This will allow us to work on our array modifier without it going into the curve. Now we just need to figure out which axis works for us. It's going to be the y-axis. Since we now know that this is the right direction, we can kind of try to adjust the rope a little bit so that it kind of seamlessly goes from one segment to the other. We will achieve this by just rotating the front vertices along the y-axis just as we did before with the soft selection activated. As this is later gonna be baked into the main mesh or the low poly mesh, you don't have to be super precise about this. Just make it as close to seamless as you can. Awesome, now with the curve modifier enabled again and the array modifier being set on the y-axis, we can see that the rope is now curling around just the way we wanted it to. This means that if we now increase the number of the array modifier, we're gonna increase the length of our high poly rope. Now it's just a matter of moving it into the right position to where it actually starts, so it goes around all the way to the end of the rope. But first, there's one more thing we need to do here. We just need to make it fit better onto our low poly rope, so just move it around using the x-axis or the z-axis to make it fit perfectly around our rope. After that, move it along the y-axis to the beginning of the rope and increase the count on your array modifier. This will make it go from the beginning to the very end of the rope. And there you go, the first rope is done. Now here's the step that you might already done. Just go into edit mode and just remove the faces that you have connecting two segments. This will make the rope more seamlessly go from one segment to another. You can now unhide everything just to see what it looks like. Since we're here already, let's take our newly created rope and place it into a new collection. Let's call it rope_high, so that we stay at least somewhat organized. If we now hide everything but our rope low and rope high collection, we can move on with the other pieces of rope. For this, we just want to duplicate our newly created rope, and in the curve modifier, just select the next curve that we want to place our rope onto. Now it's just a matter of moving it around on the x-axis, on the z-axis, until we reach our fitting point. You can see it takes a little bit of time here, but you'll figure it out. Once you moved it into the correct position, you will see that it probably has too much or too little segments on the array count. If there's too many segments, just make the count in the array modifier smaller. Let's speed up the process now, because we're just going to repeat the same thing over and over again for all the other curves that are left here. See here, this was what I was talking about. Just go into array modifier and just make the count smaller until you reach a point where the segments aren't intersecting each other. To help yourself out here, go into your curve modifier and press the first display option. It's called on cage. This will allow you to adjust the shape of the mesh while it's being conformed to the curve. Just scale along the y-axis until the ends meet perfectly. If you're using some other axis in the curve modifier, you should scale along that axis. Cool. So now we have to do that for every rope that we have on our gate. So let's jump back into our warp speed mode and get to it. I see now that during editing I might have cut off the part where I took all of our low poly ropes and placed them into our rope_low collection. So if you haven't done that already, you can do it at any point of time, just to have things organized and be in the right place. We are almost done with all of our ropes now. Don't forget to check here and there with the other meshes if everything is still aligned properly. We can see here that since we've sculpted our high poly mesh, it got a little bit thicker. So we need to readjust the curve so it fits our new mesh. Luckily, this doesn't affect our high poly rope too much. If it does, just go in and try to readjust it a little bit. And there we are, ropes done. There is just one final piece of modeling we need to do to be finally over with this stage. After that, it's just UV mapping and straight into texturing. And the final piece we need to do is really simple. It's just nails that are gonna hold our planks in place. Since I've added our cylinder here to the collection of where the ropes are, I'm just gonna call the collection ropes and nails_high. Here I'm just scaling it down so it looks more like a nail, or it gets more to the size of a nail. I also see that I don't need this many faces on the cylinder, so I select every other edge and just dissolve it. Now I want to make the lower part of the nail a little thinner than the upper part, so I'm just gonna scale it down. Let's not forget to apply all the transforms, so Ctrl A, all transforms, after that right click and set origin to geometry. Here I'm just gonna extrude the upper part and move it more towards the Z-axis. Just Ctrl B to bevel it and move the innermost edge just inwards a little bit. And there you go, this already looks like a nail. Now we need to position it to the right place. And don't let my OCD fool you here, you've already clicked on all transforms, so you'll be fine. Let's help our future selves out here and save some time. You just want to select one of the edges along the full side of the nail and press Ctrl E and mark seam. You want to do it on almost every outer loop as well, so the outermost faces on the top of the nail and same on the bottom of it. If you didn't get this part right here, don't worry, we'll be going over UV mapping in the next video anyway, so don't freak out. While placing the nails on the gate, you don't want to use Ctrl D. What you want to use instead is Alt D. This will keep the object data from nail to nail the same, so they will use the same texture space and the same shape of the mesh. If you want to scale them to have different variety of nails, feel free to scale them, but do not apply the scale, because this will affect every nail on the gate. Now, to have some more variety, duplicate one of the nails by pressing Ctrl D this time, add a few supporting loop cuts, and using the soft select, just bend it a little bit. You can even bend its head a little bit, so it looks like somebody hit the nail with a hammer, but in the wrong place. Now, if you use Ctrl D, you can again press Ctrl A and click on all transforms, right click, origin to geometry, and place the newly created nails along the gate again. You can place as many nails as you like on the gate, just don't forget to use Alt D instead of Ctrl D while duplicating them. Once we're happy with the placement of our nails, we can now readjust the ropes a little bit so they fit our newly created geometry well. Ooh, I almost forgot our pivoting point of the gate, this little branch. We're gonna use the same sculpting methods as we used before to sculpt the detail into it. I moved it into the wood modifier collection, gave it a bevel modifier. Here I already rotated it. And then I'm just gonna duplicate it and move it to the wood for sculpting collection. Now we can hide the wood modifier collection, so we're just left with our branch here and go into our modifier stack and apply the bevel modifier. Same as before, we're gonna remesh it to 0.002, add a multi-resolution modifier and just start sculpting. Again, use the clay strips to create build-ups of bigger forms and then just carve some detail into it and you'll be done in no time. And there we go. If you unhide all your high poly meshes now, you can basically see what the end result will look like once we bake all this high detail into our low poly model. It looks kinda cool here, right? And that's going to be it for this part of the series. If you've been following along, I'd love to see what you've created, so feel free to share your work in the Discord channel. And if you'd rather just follow the tutorial quietly, that's totally fine too. I know these longer videos can be a bit of a grind, but I hope you've managed to learn something useful along the way. If there's anything you think I missed, something I could explain better, or if you just want to let me know how I'm doing, leave a comment down below. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the future parts of the series, updates and announcements. In the next episode, we will quickly unwrap our gate to prepare it for texturing, bake the high poly details onto the low poly mesh and create some cool stylized textures to bring the asset to life. Thank you for all the support so far and I'll see you in the next one.